How do you make a home feel cozy? This is certainly a question that we all begin to ask when the seasons begin to change. In Australia, we are starting to come into summer, so I am not thinking about this all that frequently. However, with a house that has no heating, surprisingly, I still am. In today's video, I thought I'd go ahead and give you 6 tips as to how to create a cozy feeling in your home. This doesn't necessarily stop at what type of design trends that you're into and what you have currently in your home. This is more of a vibe rather than a design style, so please do not stress too much about that. If you are new here and you would like to get some more interior design based entrepreneurial type of content, make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe. It really does help this channel out a lot. Now let's get into the video. Tip number 1 is lighting, and I know that lighting doesn't seem to be all that important. However, lighting really creates the vibe of the space, particularly when you're hitting evening times. Having just your downlights on really just destroys that. I have honestly been completely converted ever since I got my hue lights. I have them in both my living space and my bedroom as well, and I have these automatically come on and they just straight away set the vibe. I think the reason why lighting in particular creates a cozy vibe is because it almost represents that sunset and the fact that we are slowly drifting into night, and sometimes that can be hard to create in an interior if you've only got one source of lighting. For me, in my living space, I only have 3 sources of lighting, but they are all layered at different heights and at different points of the room, so they do really create this cozier sort of vibe once the nighttime starts setting in. However, I would 100% recommend going for at least 3 types and then going ahead and seeing if you can add more. Sometimes if it's only a small space, maybe 3 types of lamps might be beneficial and enough for you. However, if it is a bigger space, try using floor lamps, desk lamps, and other forms of lighting in different areas and trying to layer them so they're not all at the same level. Some of them are higher up, some of them lower down, and this will create a really beautiful effect. For me, I also really enjoy lighting up the plants. We have only just started being plant parents, so we don't have too many plants just yet. However, I have noticed that when you do go ahead and light a plant from the base, it just makes it look far more majestic, particularly at night. And that goes ahead and puts us into tip number 2, and that is to add plants. The reason why you should add plants to your space, whether they're artificial or real, is that plants have this really crazy and unique way of adding really unapologetic texture to the space and pattern that cannot really be replicated anywhere else. When you take a plant out of the space, it feels less alive. Sounds silly, I know, but once I put the fiddle leaf into my home, I realized that I was missing something in my life, and that was plants, and now I've got too many, but I want more. Plants are fantastic. It doesn't matter what kind of plants that you're into, if it's cacti or if it is more of those like rainforest type plants. Plants create a really great visual effect, and a lot of the ones that have leaves really soften a space, whereas something like a cacti will add a lot of architectural and structural elements, which may not necessarily be soft, but they definitely will add an element to the space that wasn't there before. If you aren't a fan of plants, having little bouquets of flowers and vases also work as well, like I've got here. I honestly quite like using this as well. I use this a little bit less personally, just because I like using real plants and real flowers, but it is certainly another option. I think one of the main elements that really defines whether a space feels really warm and really cozy is the textures. And honestly, texture through textiles is probably the main way everybody likes to do that. Recently, I did an AD home review of Jared Padalecki and Genevieve Padalecki's home, where Virginia Davidson designed the space, and I think that is the peak of coziness. So if you haven't seen that video, make sure you go check that one out. I really think layering textures is probably one of the most important pieces. So this might be incorporating different types of velvets, chunky throws, wool, cotton, different materials on top of each other really creates that sense of depth and really makes you want to snuggle up. If you're someone like myself that really loves adding pops of color into the space and you've already got color already in the space, so for example, I've already got yellow and blue chairs and a green velvet couch, going with something neutral would probably be the better option for me and would be for most people as well because it's more transitional. You're not going to get rid of it anytime soon and it's going to be something that stands the test of time a lot longer. However, if you do really enjoy those pops of colors, maybe having one or two items that do have that pop of color and then keeping everything neutral or muted would really enhance the space and definitely give that tactile effect. Honestly, I usually see this in the shape of more so decor items, so that will be your cushions, your throws, perhaps even your drapery as well. You wouldn't necessarily always see this in the furniture because it is a higher ticket item and it's something that you have to maintain. A lot of those types of materials sometimes can be harder to clean when they are on a piece of furniture, so that's just something to keep in mind, and at least you know where to add those elements in. Now, I did quickly mention the color palette side of things. I personally think that you should be sticking with either neutrals or muted tones. It's totally okay if you are someone like myself that does love a lot of color. However, to create a cozier space, think of slightly muted versions of the color that you like. So let's say that you like red. Maybe go for a burnt red or a muted version of the red that you like, because this is going to darken things up a little bit and it's still going to give you that red, but it's not as wow in your face red. And this is going to give the illusion of it being a little bit cozier than something like a fire truck red. Stereotypically, we do see a lot of those like Pinterest style sort of homes having more of a neutral look, but this can be achieved with color. So please, please, please do not stress if color is your vibe. It is certainly possible. One of the main ways that I do really like incorporating warmth, and I think is probably the most obvious way of creating warmth, is through natural elements, and particularly wood. Wood, especially when it has been aged and it is real physical wood, it creates this tactile and textural effect that is very hard to duplicate with a lot of the mass productions that we have these days. I currently don't have very much of it in my space, unfortunately. However, having weathered sort of timber materials really adds that added layer of texture to a space, and it really creates this calming sort of effect because it is tied to nature and it really plays really lovely with plants as well. And the great thing about timber is that it plays with pretty much any design style. Your other options are things like stone and other forms of masonry. I personally like going for more of that sort of rough, not completely polished look, but the polished look also works as well. The polished look definitely works a lot better for people that like a more cleaner, sleek space, or even a space that may have children or pets in it where they may go ahead and knock their heads. However, I personally like having something that's a little bit more free form, a little bit more natural looking, because having all of these elements of nature and the natural elements of nature tied into a room really comes back to our roots and how we naturally would have been in the outside environment. It sounds really silly to say, but majority of the things that I've listed already is all just tying us back into nature. The plants, timber elements, and the tactile elements and the lighting tying in with the sunset. It's all kind of tying into what we are as natural human beings, I suppose you could say, which is really weird to say out loud now that I'm thinking about it, but there's something innately there that we are all drawn to, and there's probably a reason for that. Okay, lucky last, drapery is a huge one. I don't really like the blinds sort of thing. I feel like sometimes they can be a bit too harsh. They don't always provide much in terms of design style. Adding in some really soft, lovely drapes can really make the space feel softer because it softens up all those hard lines from the windows, and then it also adds an element of trying to bring some straight lines up to the ceiling, so it makes it feel a little bit larger while also having a soft element to it. And I actually did this in my bedroom space. I actually went ahead and did my entire wall in a curtain, even though it doesn't necessarily need it, because the window is actually quite small. But the reason I did this was because it was very boxy. There was nothing that was soft in the space. All of my furniture was very heavy, very masculine. It needed something that was a little bit lighter and had a bit of a natural flow to it to really soften it. And that is why I went ahead and did that. And I think it's a great way to do it. You don't have to use neutral colors. However, I do find that particularly with drapery and more fixed items like drapes, like paint, like large sofas and such like that, having a more neutral color means it's easier to transition out of styles, colors and trends a little bit easier. I hope this quick video has really helped you narrow down how to really add some key elements into your space to make it feel a lot cozier. Make sure you go ahead and leave a comment down below as to what your favorite tip was, and if you have any of your own, make sure you do that too. Please think about liking and subscribing. It really does help the channel out. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next video.